This is Todd Bertuzzi. From around 2001 until 2004, he was one of the most dynamic offensive producers in the NHL. Tragically, when Bertuzzi's name comes up, the first thing to mind is this. Yeah, that was a nasty sucker punch. But the truth is, Bertuzzi was far more than a goon. During the short prime of his career, he was one of the top superstars and most unique players in the league.
Bertuzzi in behind Fisher and on goal, scores!
Here's Naz, another wrangling, 42 to go on power play. Back to Sokol, shot deflected. He scored! Bertuzzi, and the Canucks have tied the game at 1. Bertuzzi, who's your daddy?
Since then, every team in the league has been searching for the next Todd Bertuzzi, and they don't even realize it. However, no player has come close to becoming what Bertuzzi was during his prime. For today's fans, imagine taking the most skilled power forward in the league, like Mikko Rantanen, but then give him Tom Wilson's strength and aggressiveness. I know what you're thinking. That would be like the best player in the league, right? Well, at one time, you could argue that Todd Bertuzzi was. So what truly happened to this polarizing and possibly misunderstood hockey legend? Let's take a deeper look. Starting at the 1993 NHL Draft. After the Islanders picked Bertuzzi, all the talk surrounding the selection revolved around his toughness, aggression, and physicality. A brief mention of his stride, but very little recognition for his actual hockey abilities. The truth is, Bertuzzi scored 27 goals and nearly a point per game in his draft-eligible season for the Guelph Storm, numbers that ranked him 7th in goals and 8th in points amongst draft-eligible players coming out of his league. So Bertuzzi was told from day one, if you want to make it in the NHL, you have got to be the meanest player on the ice every single game you play. Bertuzzi failed to make the Islanders out of camp for 2 straight seasons, but in his final year with Guelph, he scored 50 goals and nearly 120 points. And guess what? Bertuzzi's penalty and fighting totals were way down, showing just how talented he was when his focus was strictly on offense. He doubled down by scoring 15 goals and 33 points in 14 playoff games, en route to a finals loss. At this point, Bertuzzi was a different looking prospect. Once looked at as an enforcer, it was clear that Bertuzzi had more to offer. He also had some leverage, because if he didn't sign a contract, he would re-enter the draft and would be projected as a lottery pick. The Islanders also recently signed Eric Lindros's brother, Brett Lindros, to a 5-year deal worth $6.7 million a year earlier before playing an NHL game. So the Isles agreed to pay Bertuzzi $4.6 million over a 4-year deal before he even laced him up in the chow. During his rookie season, playing on Long Island, Bertuzzi showed a lot of promise.
Bertuzzi scores! Todd Bertuzzi able to swing home his first National Hockey League goal.
However, the ensuing seasons, he failed to improve his offensive numbers and was constantly criticized for lacking aggression, believe it or not. One of his coaches, Clark Gillies, publicly stated about Bertuzzi, "If you're built like a freight train, you can't drive around like a Volkswagen." Bertuzzi was young, but he was already disgruntled. The prospect felt that the Islanders were trying to groom him into a player that he didn't want to be. He wanted a real opportunity to show off his abilities as a scorer, not just a goon. It was clear that a change was needed, so Bertuzzi demanded a trade. The Islanders shipped him, along with Brian McCabe and a 3rd-round pick to the Canucks for Trevor Linden. As soon as Bertuzzi stepped onto the ice for Vancouver, you could tell his game was different.
Here's captured with Newman, and they score!
Todd Bertuzzi, his first game as a Vancouver Canuck, his first goal as a Vancouver Canuck.
He was unleashed by the Canucks and was motivated to play fast and fierce. He was quickly becoming a fan favorite and proving himself as an integral part of the future core. During the 99-2000 NHL season, he hit career highs in all statistical categories. His 25 goals and 187 hits made him one of only 3 players in the league to put up those stats, along with Owen Nolan and Shane Doan. At age 24, Bertuzzi was on the up and up as one of the most promising young power forwards in the NHL, and Vancouver was loving it. He was voted the most exciting player on the team by the fans and was putting a new energy in Vancouver.
World premiere of the Todd Bertuzzi music video.
He's 245 and it looks like the Watusi. I
said, it's called the Todd Bertuzzi. Called the Todd Bertuzzi.
In 2001, Big Bert once again finished second to Marcus Naslund on the team in goals with 25, but also helped lead the Canucks to the playoffs after they had missed in 4 straight seasons. But the Canucks got swept in the first round by the Colorado Avalanche, a series that, in retrospect, probably fueled a little hatred into the Canucks organization. The next season, about 5 games in, Avalanche goon Scott Parker went after Canucks star defenseman Ed Jovanovski, and Bertuzzi jumped off the bench to protect Jovo. The incident earned Bert a 10-game suspension, but his head coach Mark Crawford barely blinked an eye and definitely didn't criticize Bertuzzi. Instead, the Canucks bench boss said this to reporters: "The penalty in this case really doesn't fit the crime. We're just going to have to deal with it. We all appreciate that Todd acted emotionally and he was going to the defense of his teammates, which is one of the things that endears us as a team. We have to be a team that sticks up for one another. You just have to use common sense." Once again, here is another example of Bertuzzi being praised for an illegal play, even after he had proven himself as one of the team's most valuable scorers. Nowadays, an NHL team wouldn't expect a top-line player to hop over the boards and attack an opponent, but the league was still different, and Bertuzzi, while developing as a scorer, was still expected to be the baddest dude in the league. We'll never know if this incident in October of 2001 galvanized the team, or if it fueled Bertuzzi with extra motivation to take over the league. The Canucks struggled without their young power forward in the lineup, and when he returned, Mark Crawford threw a line consisting of Marcus Naslund and Todd Bertuzzi on the wings, centered by Brendan Morrison. The line was nicknamed the West Coast Express, and instantly became the best show in hockey, and a new era was born in British Columbia.
Morrison to Bertuzzi, loose puck, Naslund scores! Marcus Naslund has the hat trick!
This was during the dead puck era, when goals were down across the league. But Mark Crawford allowed these Canucks to play wide open, and particularly Bertuzzi and Naslund became the most dynamic duo in the NHL.
Here's Marcus Naslund streaking to the end, holds up, Bertuzzi scores!
Naslund and Bertuzzi finished second and third in the league in scoring, behind only Jarome Iginla. They were putting up better numbers than Hall of Famers like Matt Sundin and Joe Sakic in the primes of their careers. In fact, Bertuzzi scored 85 points in only 72 games because of his early season suspension. Big Bert's breakout was drastic. His skills were on a whole other level. At age 27, Bertuzzi had officially broken out as one of the most dynamic offensive weapons in the world, and was also a physical force to be reckoned with, truly feared and loved wholeheartedly by Vancouver.
I think what we take the most credit for is that we brought entertaining hockey back to Vancouver. It was much-watched TV because we were playing a brand and a style that was not familiar to a lot. We had a lot of leeway in order to play that way. We'd win 7-6, but we entertained.
The Canucks ended up losing in the first round to the eventual cup-winning Wings, but were officially on the map. The next season, the West Coast Express took another leap. Bertuzzi finished with career highs 46 goals and 97 points. He also recorded 144 penalty minutes that year, numbers that no one has come close to replicating since Bertuzzi. In fact, Corey Perry and Matthew Tkachuk are the only players since Bertuzzi to even put up 40 goals and 100 penalty minutes in a season since 2003. Not bad company. They entered the playoffs as the 4th seed and overcame a 3-1 series deficit in the first round to beat the Blues. However, in the second round, they got a taste of their own medicine. After going up 3-1 in the series against the Minnesota Wild, the Canucks let Minnie come back into the series and force a Game 7. Vancouver took a 2-0 lead in the final game when Bertuzzi started running his mouth to the Wild bench, telling them to get their golf bags ready. Whether or not Bertuzzi added fuel to the Wild is uncertain, but the Wild ended up winning the game 4-2 after a third-period comeback. Bertuzzi's play in the playoffs really wasn't up to expectations, and unfortunately, he never got another chance to redeem himself in the playoffs on the Canucks. In 2003-04, the Canucks as a whole were looking stronger than ever. Vancouver and Colorado were duking it out for supremacy in the division. To Canucks fans, it felt like the tides had finally turned in their favor. The team was the deepest they had, maybe ever at that point. Even though the team was performing at a higher level, Todd Bertuzzi was struggling compared to prior years. He only had 17 17 goals and 60 points in 69 games heading into that infamous game against the Avs, which, by the standard he built for himself, was subpar. But the stats were still good enough to make him the second highest scorer in the entire NHL over a span of 3 straight seasons, only falling short of his line mate, Marcus Naslund. Impressive, but we all know what happened.
Now Steve Moore. Back center. On Naslund, and they go after Moore.
A young Avs player named Steve Moore threw a nasty elbow to the head of Marcus Naslund. It was a dirty play that undoubtedly got a strong reaction from the Canucks, and Mark Crawford, the Canucks coach who, in retrospect, was a complete hothead, threw gasoline on the fire instead of keeping his boys in line.
But that was a cheap shot by a young kid on a captain, leading scorer in the league, and we get no call.
The next time the Nucks and Avs played, it was a blowout. And even though Moore fought Matt Cook in the first period, that wasn't enough for Bertuzzi. Remember, Bertuzzi had been hardwired from a very young age to protect his teammates, and Naslund was the most valuable teammate he had ever played alongside. Add to the fact that Bertuzzi was frustrated with his own offensive play, and it was a stage set for disaster.
Todd Bertuzzi after Steve Moore. Grabs his sweater, gives him a whack, and piling on is Andrei Nicolishin, and everybody's into it. Now we got a line brawl.
Oh, Steve Moore's hurt really bad.
And now they need a trainer on the ice in a hurry here. And they need more than just the trainers. They're calling for medical help for Steve Moore.
Steve, I just want to apologize for what happened out there. That I had no intention on hurting you. And I feel awful for what transpired.
The sucker punch was awful. Clearly, Bertuzzi felt remorse. We don't want to let Bertuzzi off the hook for his actions, but there is definitely an element of bad luck. If Moore never suffers a broken neck on the play, who knows what Bertuzzi's career and legacy look like? And Bertuzzi surely wasn't the only one to blame for the incident. In fact, Bertuzzi filed a third-party lawsuit against his coach Mark Crawford, who he claims ordered him to go after Moore, and Bertuzzi's job was to obey his coach's demands. Crawford denied the claims. Big Bert was just around 30 years old at the time of the incident, and the Canucks were just entering their most fruitful years as a franchise. Without Bertuzzi, the Canucks were eliminated by the Flames in the first round. The next NHL season was cancelled due to a lockout, but Bertuzzi was banned by the IIHF, so he had to miss a whole season, with the incident clouding over him as the last time he played an organized game. When the NHL restarted in 2005, Gary Bettman reinstated Bertuzzi, partially because of, quote, significant uncertainty, anxiety, stress, and emotional pain caused to Bertuzzi's family. And when the power forward returned, those watching could clearly see how heavy the burden was on Todd Bertuzzi. He looked drained. In 2005-06, Bertuzzi scored 25 goals and 71 points, but was clearly a shell of his former self. There was no longer emotion or spark in his game, and the Sedin twins were in the midst of overtaking the West Coast Express line as the offensive leaders of the team. So it was clear a change needed to be made. Dave Nonis packaged Bertuzzi to the Florida Panthers for Roberto Luongo, a franchise-altering deal that led the Canucks into a golden age, and Bertuzzi into mediocrity. Bertuzzi got off to a hot start with Florida, but he started suffering back spasms. Another gut shot, just when it seemed like he was being offered a new beginning. Bertuzzi opted for surgery, but returned in time for the Detroit Red Wings to acquire him at the deadline for a playoff run. After that, he had stints in Calgary and Anaheim, where Bertuzzi failed to play up to the expectations set. In 2009, Bertuzzi signed a contract with the Detroit Red Wings, where he reinvented himself as a role player. He prioritized defense and became a two-way grinder, a very good one at that in his later years. He earned respect from his teammates for his professionalism, and even dazzled with glimpses of the skill that briefly made him a superstar in the shootout. But eventually, in 2014, at age 39, Bertuzzi was forced into retirement. When it was all said and done, Bertuzzi retired without much hardware. No Stanley Cups, and 2 All-Star appearances. Beyond that, he earned a reputation as a villain. But in reality, his career tells a much deeper tale. We're talking about a player that wasn't only amongst the most skilled scorers in the world, he also brought the physicality and aggression that every team covets. Since Big Bert, there hasn't been a power forward that dominated both physically and on the score sheet quite like him. Bertuzzi was never supposed to be a star. He was supposed to be a goon, an enforcer, but he became so much more than that, and in many ways, pioneered in a new brand of hockey. Look, we don't want to come up with excuses for Bertuzzi's actions, but with all the hate smeared over his name, let's just recognize that in his prime, he was a one-of-a-kind superstar, and since his downfall, we are yet to truly find another Todd Bertuzzi. Thanks for watching, guys. If you liked this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel to keep up with Think Hockey, because the best is yet to come.